I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race.
Net zero. Oh my God, isn't it awful? Tell you what, we're not even a part of it. Look at the numbers.
Net zero, you know what net zero, they have no idea what it means, by the way. It's net zero. What does that mean? Nobody knows.
Climate change has become a climate crisis, and a threat has now become a reality.
Zero carbon.
East off. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 6, The Cow in the Room. I'm Ian Collins and this is your number one go-to environment-based podcast. If it's green, it is in. And we start, this is episode 2, Dale, isn't it, I think? Episode
3. No, 3, sorry.
Is it 3? 3? Yeah, episode 3 already. It's like we're nearly on the next series. And we've got a lot to get through here. Can we start with a right-wing nut, though? Because, I mean, it was a much-loved feature of the last series. We said we were going to introduce it when relevant. There was a bit of a toss-up on this one, though.
Yeah, coin toss. Claire Coutinho, ex-Energy Secretary, speaking at an Energy UK conference, I don't know, last few days, I think.
Yeah.
She issued a warning that the rapid increase in solar and wind power in the UK could result in higher energy prices, which is all kinds of counterfactual. This stuff is cheaper than fossil fuels. And her point was that we might overload the energy system with intermittent renewables, and if we don't plan properly, it could happen. So there's all kinds of if, buts, and maybes in there. Fortunately, we have a grid operator responsible for that who have said very clearly we can get to 100% renewables without a problem. But the funny thing is her quote. She explained, and I'm quoting, "Renewables are not cheap in every single scenario. It depends on the price you pay for them." Unquote.
Wow. I mean, that's the greatest lesson in economics we've had for a long time. It depends on the price you pay for them. Well, yeah.
It's like something out of a Christmas cracker. It's quite meaningless.
It is a completely vacuous statement, but she was in close competition for right-wing nut this week.
Yes, with our buddy Nige, right?
Go on.
Well, he's in a little bit of hot water. He's been accused of fanning the flames of the recent riots, of having caused them to a degree by posting a video online after the murder of the 3 young girls and some certain things that he said. And he's come out and said, no, I was just repeating, stuff that I'd seen. And it turns out the stuff was from that well-known purveyor of the truth, Andrew Tate.
Well, Tate, as far as I'm concerned, is the Oracle of Delphi when it comes to Newsdale. Do you not know that? I've long turned off Trevor McDonald to get my daily dose of what's happening in the world. I'm Tate-bound on a regular basis.
He's a man everybody calls a misogynist, influencer, and somebody facing criminal charges for things including human trafficking and rape. And and Nigel Farage says, it's all right, Gov, I was just quoting Andrew Tate.
We see that seems to be a big defense now when people put shit on social media. And I maybe I'm naive on this. I tend to think by now, I know social media, in theory, you have the same publishing responsibilities as the person that publishes The Guardian or The Telegraph when it comes to libel and stuff you can say. You've got a bit more scope in terms of, you can swear, you can do all of that stuff. However, I tend to think that by now, surely, everybody knows the stuff you don't do because we've been through these arguments so many times. And the one thing that keeps coming up as a defense is, no, I didn't post that. No, I was just saying what somebody else had posted. I was just saying, if this was true, then wouldn't that be a terrible thing? Thus, reposting it, basically.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the thing people seem to kind of overlook is the most important thing really is the source. You might read something online, but check the source if you want to have a sense of whether it's valid or not. And I bumped into this, of course, recently in that Hamasgate saga, where I was accused of being a terrorist sympathizer by all kinds of right-wing fools. And a bunch of them were just repeating stuff on social media and embellishing it, adding to it and that kind of stuff. And it just became a snowball of falsehoods online. And
nobody, there is that school of thought that, it's the Wild West, it's Twitter, we can say whatever we like. There isn't, it's like, no, I come back to what I just said. Surely by now, you must know. And I say to every time I read some old crap on Twitter or wherever, Every now and again, I've tweeted somebody back and said, mate, just Google it. Just have a little look up the name, look up the story, and you will find out within half a second that what you've just put out there is a load of old bollocks.
And it doesn't help that you have people like Musk and Trump putting out a load of old bollocks every day of the week and setting a very bad example.
Let's move on. Pesticides.
In case they sue me.
Well, I was going to say, because you never know. We both caught this story as well. This is a post-Brexit pesticide story, which is a bit unnerving.
This is a Brexit story, first and foremost. And of course, we love them. We were promised, weren't we, by Johnson and Gove and all kinds of people that our standards, our environmental standards post-Brexit wouldn't drop. Some of them even argued they would increase. Right? The truth of all of those lies is in this report out today that shows the amount of pesticide residue allowed on scores of food types in England, Wales, and Scotland has soared since Brexit. And that's a quote from the report. It's absolutely soared. I'm going to give you some stats from it. So it's based on changes to regulations that we made here. There are now more than 100 items allowed to carry more pesticides when sold to the public, from potatoes to onions to grapes, coffee, rice, all that kind of stuff. So it's about something called MRL, or maximum residue level, which has increased by 4,000 times for an insecticide whose name I can't say and a fungicide whose name looks like boscalid, right? And for the controversial weed killer glyphosate, which is classed as a probable human carcinogen by the World Health Organization, the MRL, the allowable level for beans, was raised over 7-fold, which is all kinds of incredible. These new standards that we've adopted, not all of them, I'm just going to come back to that in a second, are based on a Codex Alimentarius, a set of international food standards from the UN and the Agriculture Organization and the WHO, who are believed to be heavily influenced by the big agriculture industry of the US and other places. But there are parts of this codex where the allowable levels of these pesticides and other dangerous chemicals are reduced. The UK chose not to adopt those, to keep the higher level that we already have. So we've adopted the higher levels and we've refused the lower levels, which is like the worst you could imagine, the worst outcome. But
who sits in a meeting, Dale? Somebody sat in a meeting and went, right, guys, you've got a choice here, right? You can have some toxic shit, or you can have this stuff that's fine. They went, no, we'll go for the toxic stuff, please.
I think we know who, don't we? They're not in office now, but they're the guys that did this.
Extraordinary.
The Tories.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you talk about who's in office now, because this week we saw David Lammy, he's the Foreign Secretary. He said a couple of interesting things. Nothing that hasn't been said before. This was his comment that climate change is a more fundamental threat than terrorism or wicked dictators. What was the game changer about this was that it came from a senior government minister. It's not often somebody in office of that rank says something like that.
That's right. I mean, you've got it all in there. We've heard it before. It is true. Of course it's true. The climate crisis is a bigger issue. Wars will come and go. But this one is planet-wide and currently out of control. But yeah, David Lammy said it. That's a big deal. I'm still so very hopeful that this government gets what needs to be done, gets what the challenges are, and is busy doing it. I mean, so far so good, I would say. A whole slew of policy changes that have been made already. We're in a very fundamentally different place to what we were, was it 3 months ago now?
Yeah, it was, if that. Yeah, something of that nature.
Oh, I think it's 3 months and 11 days.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to know that.
Listen, when you're on Celebrity Mastermind next year, that's going to don't try and challenge Vince on days, months, weeks, and years. Come back with a full scorecard. Look, what's that noise? It's the book bugle, Dale. It's returned. Why would it return when your book is already written and on the shelves? It's almost as if you've written another one.
Not quite, but I am in the process. Huh?
It's almost as if you're about to write another one.
I love it.
It's almost as if you can't be asked to write another one.
I can't be asked.
We've covered all bases there.
All right. So look, what's happening here is I am writing another book. I think I might have said that at the start of this series, because the series title is The Cow in the Room and the title of the book is the same. I thought I might have mentioned it, But anyway, work is underway on this book, and it comes off the back of a kind of summer roadshow. I went to a bunch of festivals and places and found myself on panels, and I kept bringing this same thing up. The cow in the room, right, guys? You environmentalists, you animal lovers, you nature lovers, you're eating nature. Every day that you choose to eat animal products, you're driving the climate crisis as well and supporting the most hideous animal cruelty. It's the cow in the room. That's the gist of it. I'm off to the Labour conference on Sunday. I'm doing a bunch of talking gigs there. I'll be talking about the cow in the room, I think, on Monday at a CERA event. It's actually the cow in the room for the government as well, right? And there's been an amazing report out last week and a piece in The Guardian this week from Lord Darcy about the state of the NHS. And this week in The Guardian, he argued that the way to fix it is to fix all of the things that are not in the NHS, the things around it, our lifestyle, our diets, the role of the big food industry with their unhealthy products. And I mean, super radical, this guy. I'd like to meet him. He proposed that anybody that makes something that harms society, a product that harms society, should pay a tax on that product. We see it already, of course, in tobacco, to a degree alcohol, but he wants to go further with food and that kind of stuff, which I completely support. I think it's in my first book. We should have a meat tax. Yes, we should tax all the bad things. But anyway, it's actually an issue for government because they have a responsibility to keep us safe from unhealthy, dangerous, toxic in some cases, things like the pesticides we were just talking about, but the salt, fat, and sugar in processed food as well, ultra-high processed foods, they're new on the scene. Government have a responsibility to deal with those and to give us advice to help us live healthier lives. And all of that is how we prevent bad health and how we help fix the NHS. It's very interesting, but it's a cow in the room because governments don't like to be seen to be the nanny state. I think Keir Starmer's already mentioned that, and I think Labour will face this issue down along with NIMBYs as well. So that's it. End of my rant about the cow in the room.
I like it. And the book out as well as soon as you've written the darn thing.
Yeah. In the spring.
In the spring. It always sounds good, like in the spring. Here's a question from George who says, is the renationalisation of the electricity system operator as big a game changer as people are suggesting?
I don't know, because I haven't seen how people have been reacting to that. I think it's a really good thing. It feels like a big step to me because this is the system operator, not the owners of the wires and the pipes, but the operator that does the balancing. And I think for government to be in control of that, that's vital as far as I'm concerned, to make sure that the lights don't go out, but also to do it in an economic way so that there aren't super profits going to some generators that abuse the system that's really created to allow them to, because we see that quite often. In our sites right now, for example, is to price control the people that own the wires, the DNOs, they're known as district network operators. They're allowed a 40% profit margin where energy retailers allowed 1.5%. And we've calculated if we treat them the same, we can knock 200 quid off everybody's energy bill overnight. So they're the kind of things we're looking at and saying this energy market thing is slightly broken. We can make it better and we can drive bills down and we can take super profits out of the system.
Here's a question which ties in with a story as well. This is from Caroline. It says, isn't it a strange world? There was a real struggle in my generation when coal mines were being shut down by first Harold Wilson and then, of course, famously by Margaret Thatcher, and an outcry. Who would have thought all these years later this was the right decision?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if you ever laid in bed and thought, thank you, Maggie.
I occasionally say it, but not like that. I occasionally just point out she enabled ecotricity to come into being because she liberalized the energy market in Britain. She opened the door that allowed independents to get a license and sell electricity, and that's what I did. So that I often laugh about that being probably the one thing I could credit her with. And some people do try to say, look, she was a visionary, she shut coal down decades ago. Yeah. Point is, right, she didn't do it for climate reasons. She did it to break the unions, and she did it in a really bad, brutal way. There was not even a consideration of a transition for coal mining communities and workers, nothing at all. That's something that can't happen as we shut down the North Sea. We won't allow it. I'm certain of it.
I just thought of something else she did inadvertently. You're going to love this. She got rid of the school milk. Oh. That's a good thing, right? She got rid of coal. She got rid of milk. She was essentially making her own cow in the room narrative before anybody had thought of the phrase.
Again, maybe the right move, but for the wrong reason. And she could have replaced it with oat milk or something like that. But yeah, she took cow's milk away, didn't she? Thatcher, the milk snatcher, was the famous
That's the one.
phrase. But she did it to save money because she didn't believe in it, right? She didn't believe in society. She didn't believe that we should be helping each other.
And it's interesting, we mentioned coal mines because just this week, the High Court quashed the construction of this £165 million deep coal mine, which we've talked about. This is a scheme in Cumbria. We've talked about it for a long time, Dale, the to-in and the fro-ing, and now it's finally gone.
Yeah, it was one of the maddest decisions that the previous administration made in the teeth of a climate crisis and the international consensus that we have to stop drilling for oil and gas. They decided to open a coal mine, the dirtiest of fossil fuels. So it was a stunning piece of stupidity, piece of politics, really. They argued we needed it for steel production, while the steel industry here said, "Oh no, we don't." And we had a good laugh about that at the time, didn't we? But this case, this judgment from I think it's from the High Court actually, is really important. It hasn't just shut this mine before it starts. It's going to have a knock-on impact for probably Rosebank, actually, which may be facing a difficult environment now because the ruling essentially says you can't consent one of these things, right, an oil well or a coal mine, without taking into account the downstream impact on climate change, the carbon emissions that come from the lifetime of drilling for this stuff and somebody else burning it. That's been avoided up until now in the equation. It can't be anymore.
Let's move then, as we head towards completion of episode 3, to X-Rated Corner. These are the messages that came through on X that are not always as favourable to your cause, Dale. And we'll start with one from Max, who says, Vince. That's how you know when you're in trouble.
Right, yeah.
Where they use the surname Vince. Renewables are about us becoming poor, cold, sick, and hungry. You and the rest of the green communists, I'm going to get angrier as I read it, communists are driving the UK into energy poverty. You aren't stupid. You know the consequences of this. That makes you evil.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that somebody believes that. I mean, I want to say that arguably Britain is poor, cold, sick, and hungry right now. Certainly millions of people suffer from those situations right now. Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy that we can build, bar none. And for every pound we spend on renewable energy, we get twice the jobs and twice the GDP growth, and we get a form of energy not priced by global markets. We won't have another energy crisis once we're 100% green on the grid. And so what's being said here is so counterfactual as to be, well, simply balmy.
Well, here's another one, just to sort of sit nicely next to that, from somebody called Tafasa. Yeah, that right there, that was made up. Who says, Mr. Vince, that's almost as bad. There's no climate crisis, record food production, no tipping points, big decline in extreme weather and wildfires. Everything is just fine. Not a shred of evidence for your imaginary crisis. Stop fear-mongering, all you grifters like Dale. Yeah, stop it, Dale. Stop making shit up. That says Mr. Tissafaha.
Mr. Tossafasa or whatever it is. Listen, we should call this Counterfactual Corner, right? Because
I love that.
No climate crisis. I mean, that's against all of the evidence. A big decline in extreme weather and wildfires. Oh my God. We never used to talk about extreme weather and wildfires, but now we talk about it all the time. Just this week, we're looking at the rivers of the Amazon drying up completely. It's unprecedented. This is Counterfactual Corner right now.
And here's one from Chubalito89.
I'm loving the names the most, I gotta say.
It's just brilliant. He says, the sun and our orbit around it cause climate change, not CO2s. That's a scam. I'm up for being green as possible, but let's not make up porkies to increase our tax.
Well, you know, it's not as angry and rabid as the two before it, but it is completely misconceived. The idea that CO2 levels in our atmosphere are anything like natural is just incredible. They're the highest they've been for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. We can see that. Science tells us that. And we know that it began with the mass burning of fossil fuels at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution only about 200 years ago. And we've seen the concentrations of CO2 soar. It's a greenhouse gas. It's heating up our planet, but it causes all kinds of wacky weather, not just a warmer planet.
Final one. I said this I think I said it last week, that you always know when you're in trouble on social media, when the person that you're communicating with or the person that's posting has numbers after their name for some reason. I don't know. It seems to be a bit of a thing. Anyway, Ken the British Patriot, 19782645793296 says, would Vince have a wind turbine in his garden? Bet he will never answer this.
Oh.
How do you reply to Ken the Patriot?
I would say, hold on to your Union Jack, Ken, because the answer is, firstly, I'm going to answer it, right? And secondly, the answer is yes. I would love to have a wind turbine in my garden. And in fact, I will have one in hopefully a few weeks' time. We're just starting to make a small windmill of 1 kilowatt size, which you can put up without planning permission. Thank for that, because, I mean, they're a nightmare, the planners. And I'm going to stick one up in my garden.
Yeah, and one up your ass, Ken. So there we go.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think it would work very well up there.
I don't know. There's a lot of hot air coming from Ken by the sounds of things. What a high point to finish on, Dale. But we will speak in a week, and watch out for Dale, of course, at the Labour Party conference. We'll see you in 7 days, Dale.
I can't wait.
And don't forget, of course, to follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/Dale Vince, facebook.com/Dale Vince, and of course on TikTok too.
You gotta love it.
Zero carbon.
East off.